All right, we have talked about how atoms establish um, essentially a neutral charge, if you want to look at it that way. Um, so now we're going to be drawing an atom. We're gonna do carbon. Carbon is an essential element to living things. We talked about carbon in photosynthesis and cellular respiration. It's uh, six atoms of it are in glucose, C6, H12O6. So let's look at carbon. Carbon, it is element number 6, and we know from just the previous few slides that means that there are 6 protons, there are 6 electrons, and there would also be 6 neutrons. So again, just to quickly recap, we know that these protons have a positive charge, so positive 6. We know that these electrons have a negative charge, negative 6. And we know that neutrons have no charge, so no charge. And when we add that up, positive 6 plus a negative 6 gives us 0, so all atoms have no charge. That's not always the case. That's just in their, I guess, if you want to call it this, the purest form. So how can we draw an atom of, say, carbon and represent this information? Perhaps you've seen something like this before. Perhaps it's brand new to you. But you set up a drawing kind of like this. You have an inner circle. And for my class, this first inner ring inside here, that will represent the nucleus. So that will represent the nucleus. Now, what goes inside the nucleus? Well, we have our protons and we have our neutrons. So I'm going to draw just 6 dots of each to kind of illustrate that. I'm going to use colored pencils. I'll use my green here to represent the protons. I'll just quickly make 6 dots. Doesn't have to be spectacular, it's just a model. And I will use red for the neutrons. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, we need to look at where these electrons go. The electrons, they do not go inside the nucleus. Electrons, they fly at super speeds, super ridiculously fast. These are found in what are known as valence shells of atoms. And in a model like this one, a valence shell is simply drawn as a ring around the nucleus. However, valence shells, they have a tendency, kind of like a cup, they can get filled up. So this first ring here, that will be the first valence shell. So this first valence shell, it can only hold 2 electrons. At 2 electrons, it fills up. I'm going to use blue to kind of represent my electrons, and I'm going to draw them a little bit bigger just for illustration purposes. They're actually way smaller than the protons and the neutrons. So you'll notice how I do this in my drawing. I draw my first one here, and I'm going to draw my second one right next to it. All right? You may see it on the internet or elsewhere, where in your first valence shell, you have 1 electron up here and 1 down here. All right? And that's not wrong, because this is filled up in 1 valence shell, and there's 2, it's filled. However, for showing things that we're going to be looking at moving forward, I do not encourage that you space them out. Electrons like to have buddies. Remember that. Electrons like to have buddies. We'll look at that, and that can become significant with bonding. So now that this first valence shell is filled, we ran out of room. What do we do next? No big deal. Just draw another circle. In reality, that's how it would happen. Kind of like orbits with the planets around the sun. You know, you have some close to the sun and some further away from the sun, and it's no different with these electrons. So I'll draw my second valence shell or second ring out here. And just so we can label that, here's my second valence shell. Maybe make note that this first one holds 2 electrons. But the second valence shell, this one can hold up to 6 electrons. So this one holds 6 electrons. So now watch how I place these in, all right? So I used 2 of my 6 electrons. So I need to put in, what, 4 more? So I'm going to start at the top, put my first electron, then I'm going to go to the bottom for my second, and then to the left, and then to the right. All right, so I have now drawn my model of carbon. And what I see when I look at this model is that carbon has its outermost valence shell. Here's its innermost. Its outermost has 4 electrons that are unpaired, which means carbon is an atom that can bond to other atoms in 1, 2, 3, 4 places. We'll talk more about that shortly when we get to bonding. This is carbon. This is element number 6.